Shabbat Shalom. As always, kids, I want you to stay here to listen to what I have to say. If you're not sure you can sit through all 15 minutes or so, you can leave and come on back in 15 minutes. Come to think of it, I say that for the adults as well. I consider it part of my job to read obituaries. So I'm intrigued by the exercise of condensing an entire lifetime into a few short sentences or paragraphs. Sometimes the obituaries are paid for by the families and friends. Other times, the deceased is considered noteworthy enough to have a formal story in the newspaper. Either way, the exercise is the same: to capture what might be decades of life in one central theme. It's a big and poignant thought. What about us is considered to be our animating life theme? What is our purpose? Why have we been placed here on this good earth in the first place? If someone had to capture our essence in a few sentences or a few paragraphs, what would they say about us? When a formal obituary is published in the newspaper, it often captures a moment in time. A person might live a century, but their newsworthiness might have been produced in one moment: a day, a project, an eyewitness to an historical event. And were it not for that moment from the public's perspective, that life would have been just another conventional life. I read obituaries also to reflect on that one moment in time covered by many of the obituaries. It is often so extraordinary, so unusual, so moving that it takes your breath away and causes you to think. Sometimes one moment captures so much about what it means to be human. A couple of weeks ago, newspapers around the world reported on the death of Jerzy Bielecki, who died at the ripe old age of 90. If you were to have met Jerzy, or somehow been privy to every single one of his 32,800 days on earth, you would not necessarily have considered him particularly newsworthy. He was Polish, he lived in a small village, he was Roman Catholic, he was married, he had children, he was a car mechanic, he spoke German. Nothing particularly newsworthy or special. Jerzy lived through World War II. Again, not unusual, hundreds of millions of people lived in Europe at that time. Jerzy's moment in time was July 21st, 1944. He was a prisoner in Auschwitz. This, too, was not an unusual event. Many millions of people were imprisoned in Auschwitz and other concentration camps. Jerzy was the first one, among the first ones to be enslaved. He was on the first transport to Auschwitz in April 1940. The Nazis grabbed him when he was 19 years old because they thought wrongly that he was a member of the Polish resistance. He was sent to work in warehouses where occasional access to additional food allowed him better chances to survive. In 1942, the first transports of Jews to Auschwitz began. Most Jews were taken straight to the gas chambers in neighboring Birkenau. A few were assigned as slave laborers, prolonging their lives until most of them also succumbed to disease or starvation. Jerzy was alive 3 years later, still alive, working in a grain warehouse, when in September 1943, a group of Jewish girls and young women walked through the doors, having been assigned to repair grain sacks in the warehouse. Among these women was 22-year-old Celia Cybulska. Celia, her parents, two brothers, and a younger sister were rounded up in the Lomża ghetto in northern Poland and taken to Auschwitz. Her parents and sisters were immediately exterminated in the gas chambers, but she and her brothers were sent to work. Within several months, her brothers too were dead. Jerzy noticed Celia when she walked in. It seemed to me, he said, that this pretty dark-haired one winked at me. That wink, or perceived wink, was the catalyst to history. Jerzy and Sylla became friends. Over time, their friendship developed into deep, passionate, and youthful love. The fragile flower of love can sprout even in the darkest places. They would tell each other their life stories and spoke about how, if they were somehow to survive, they would spend their lives together. Jerzy knew it would be impossible for both of them to survive Auschwitz. So he concocted an outrageous plan to escape. From a fellow Polish inmate working at a uniform warehouse, he secretly pieced together a complete SS uniform and a pass. He changed the officer's name in the pass from Helmut Steller to Helmut Steiner, in case the guard at the central gate were to have recognized the original Steller. He filled out a pass to say that an inmate was being led out of the camp for police interrogation at a nearby station. On July 20th, 1944, Jerzy told Sylla, "Tomorrow, an SS man will take you for an interrogation. That SS man will be me." On the afternoon of July 21st, Jerzy and Sylla made history. Dressed in stolen uniform, Jerzy walked into the laundry barrack where Sylla had been assigned, and sweating profusely with fear, demanded that the German supervisor release the woman who bore the number tattooed on Sylla's arm. He led Sylla out of the barrack and onto a long path leading to the side gate guarded by an SS man. After a few agonizing seconds, while the guard sleepily invested the forged pass, seconds that seemed like hours, the guard let them through. Jerzy later recalled, "I felt pain in my backbone where I was expecting to be shot." They kept walking. Jerzy Bielecki and Sylla Cybulska just walked out of Auschwitz. Two of less than 150 prisoners who managed to escape the fires of that hell. They hid during the day and walked at night. For 10 nights they marched. They crossed rivers and streams. When the water was high, Jerzy carried Sylla on his back to the other side. At one point, she was so weary that she asked him to leave her in the field. "We fled together, and we will walk together," he replied, as he hoisted her on his back. On the 10th night, they arrived at Jerzy's uncle's home in a village not far from Krakow. He left her there in a nearby farm, while he went off to hide in Krakow, joining the Polish resistance. They spent their last night under an orchard tree, under a pear tree in an orchard, saying their goodbyes and making plans to meet right there under the pear tree when the war ended. I wonder if that pear tree is still there. The Soviet army rolled into Krakow in January 1945. Jerzy walked the 25 miles from Krakow over snow-covered roads to meet Sylla at the farmhouse. He was 4 days too late. Sylla had been liberated 3 weeks before Krakow had been liberated, and she hadn't realized that she was liberated 3 weeks prior to Krakow's liberation, and she concluded that her beloved was dead. She boarded a train to Warsaw, planning to join an uncle in the United States. On the train, she met a Jewish man, David Zakharowicz. David and Sylla eventually married and immigrated to America, where David opened a jewelry business. They had a child and 2 grandchildren. Jerzy heard nothing of Sylla and had no way of finding her. He too married and established a family. "I was very much in love with Sylla," Jerzy said. "Sometimes I cried after the war that she was not with me. I dreamed of her at night and woke up crying." However, Sylla and Jerzy's story did not end in 1945. David died in 1975. In 1982, Zila was speaking with her Polish cleaning woman and shared the story of her escape from Auschwitz. And the woman was stunned. "I know the story," she said. "And the man is not dead. I saw a man on Polish TV telling a story about how he led his Jewish girlfriend out of Auschwitz." Zila tracked him down. Early one morning in May 1983, she called. "I heard a female voice," Jerzy recalled, "and then, 'Jurek, this is me, your little Zila.'" A few weeks later, they met at the Krakow airport. He gave her 39 red roses, one for each year that they had been separated. Zila and Jerzy met several more times, but you can never go back again. Jerzy had a wife and a family and a life in Poland. Zila died in 2005. Jerzy died last week. Yad Vashem awarded Jerzy Bielecki the Righteous Among the Nations Award. He saved Zila's life. But not only that. There is a daughter and 2 grandchildren who are alive today because of this one extraordinary man and his one extraordinary moment in time in an otherwise conventional life. These children would have never been born were it not for the Roman Catholic Polish car mechanic from a small town near Krakow. Ordinary people are capable of doing such extraordinary things. In the Torah portion of the week, Lech Lecha, we are introduced to Abraham and Sarah, the father and the mother of the Jewish people. In antiquity, it was common for well-off individuals to have individually produced coins, their own family coins. The Talmud tells us that Abraham had coins that bore the likeness of a man and a woman. On one side of the coin was printed the image of an elderly man and an elderly woman. On the other side of the coin was printed an image of a young man and a young woman. Rashi, the great commentator, explains that the elderly couple is Abraham and Sarah, and the young couple is Isaac, their son, and Rebekah, their daughter-in-law. The coin represents the circle of life. The elderly give way to the young. They are the future. But the generations are on the same coin. Without the next generation, the coin is incomplete. It has only one side. When both generations are present, the circle closes, and it is a complete and a whole coin. This one modest, humble, and relatively conventional man, Jerzy Bielecki, printed the coin of life for a family. There was on one side the parents, and on the other side the future, the children, Zila and David's daughter and son-in-law. Without Jerzy, the coin of this family's life would have never been minted. It would have disappeared from the face of the earth. As a human being, and as a rabbi, and on behalf of our grateful people, the Jewish people, thank you, Jerzy Bielecki, for your courage. Your life was the ultimate response to Hitler. You lived for 90 years, and your life was good. You saved life. Thank you for your righteousness. Thank you for your moment of brilliant light in the deep, dark night of those black times. Rest in peace, and may the glory of God receive you.